me, it's very scary that I passed with such high grades and I literally know nothing. Like, that's what's blowing my mind as I'm teaching my kids is I'm like, I don't know any of this stuff.
Right.
And yet I passed with high grades.
We were talking about the blessings of homeschooling. And I want to keep talking about that. I want to talk, and maybe even some stories if you have some. Okay. Why is homeschooling a blessing?
I mean, for me, how is it not a blessing? The one thing that I've learned that every old wise mom would tell you is it goes so fast. I remember when we brought our first home from the hospital, everybody said, it goes so fast. And I'm thinking, it could not go slower. Like, this feels like forever that I am up at night. But I have learned it goes so fast. And I think one of the greatest blessings for me is that I get to be with my kids. I get to be with them every step of the way. I get to know them, their strengths, their weaknesses, their gifts, their talents, and I get to be there for it. And I think when you only have 18 years to cut that in half, that would be devastating to me as a mom. So that's one of the huge blessings. There's so many. We could talk about academic blessings.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. I want to do this whole second half on the blessings.
Okay, awesome. Perfect.
Of homeschooling. Let's tell people, if people are, most who are probably watching this are homeschooling, but maybe they need to be reminded about the blessings. But for those who are maybe not yet homeschooling, I want them to know what the great benefits and blessings of homeschooling are. Yeah. And that doesn't mean it's always easy. It doesn't mean, obviously, like we've talked about, that it's always fun.
Right.
But there definitely are benefits and blessings to doing it. So let's keep going with that.
Okay. So let's say, I would say academic blessings. The first thing, so my husband was homeschooled for a good portion of his life. And I will never forget the big eye opener for me was we were building a turtle cage, like a turtle aquarium corner thing into a corner. And I was like the 4.0 GPA student. And he was like I would give anything to not have to go to another day of high school. I'd rather just flunk out type person. Yeah. And we were trying to do this and I was giving him all the formulas on how to fit this shelf into the corner. And he looked at me like I was speaking another language. But so he kind of stepped back and I remember for the life of me, I couldn't actually make it happen. I couldn't fit it in the corner with all the formulas. And then he looked at me and he looked at my paper and he said, I don't know what is on that paper, but let me just do this. And he did it. He made it happen. And it really opened my eyes as a teacher at the time to how differently God made all of our minds to work. And how if you don't fit in the box, that doesn't mean you're not incredibly gifted, smart, and talented. Right. And that was kind of the big opener for me. And then of course, God gave me three very different kids academically. And one of my kids is well, I know all moms say their kids are smart, but he's a very smart kid that thinks outside the box. And homeschooling allows me to help him succeed in that way where the public school, I think he would really struggle. I'm not sure, he might not, but academically, it is such a blessing as a mom to take who God has made your kids and teach them accordingly. And that's probably been, as a previous teacher, one of the coolest blessings for me because I taught 26 kids and you can't teach 26 ways. You can't give them 26 different unique educational experiences, but you can as a homeschool mom. And it just fuels me almost to be able to teach my kids in the way that God made them to learn.
Yeah. I love that part of homeschooling because you think about what the typical public school room or private school room looks like. And at the beginning of the year, the teacher has to set her agenda, for every single year. She's got her scope and sequence and all that stuff.
Without even knowing who her students are yet.
Right. Because it's what she has to do.
Yep.
And she just has to blaze through. And only a very small portion of the kids in her classroom, I mean, this firsthand, only a small portion of the kids in her classroom will actually be able to track with her.
Exactly.
Because you've got those kids who are really smart. And this is, opposites attract. Garrett and I are completely different. We both almost completely flunked out of school, but for two different reasons. And we both would have benefited from being homeschooled. He almost didn't finish school because he's brilliant. He's crazy smart, like genius smart. It's insane. And he was bored out of his mind. I mean, from the time he was like in kindergarten, he just was constantly in trouble because it was stupid to him that he was having to sit in a classroom and learn this stuff.
That he already knew.
That he already knew. And he would,
Right.
you know, he it used to frustrate his teachers because he wouldn't do his homework like ever.
Right.
But he would take a test and he would get 100% on it because the teacher had taught it in class. So why does he need to do homework?
Right.
To write down what he already knows.
Isn't that
so academically he did horribly.
Right.
But he would ace every single test.
Isn't that amazing?
And he got in so much trouble in school. Just the stories that he tells because he was bored out of his mind.
Yeah.
I was the complete opposite in that I really struggled through school, especially with math. Somewhere, math is foundational. It builds on itself. And somewhere along the line, I lost some of those building blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the teacher couldn't slow down to let me catch up. She just kept blazing through. Which
just put you further and further behind.
Exactly. And I got to the point where I was like, whatever. I don't even understand. I have no idea what she's talking about. And so I almost...
Yeah. So now you have two, you and Garrett, now you have two of these very frustrated students.
Yes.
Who could have thrived.
Yes. So much. And we see that in our girls. And it's such a blessing that we can take both of them individually in the way that God created them to learn.
Right.
And we can cater their learning to their abilities and the way that God has designed them to learn. And it's such a beautiful thing because I'm one who, I really don't care about state standards. I don't care what the book says. I don't care that the state says, well, in third grade, they should be knowing this specific math and this specific science and this specific English. Okay, well, I have two children who are one of them is ahead in one thing and she's behind in another, and another is ahead in the other thing and behind in the other. Right. And guess what? In the end, they're all going to catch up and they're going to know exactly what God wants them to know.
What God needs them to know for what he has called them to do. And that's where it comes to that faith and trust. And Jesse and I have a story like yours. I fit in that box. I thrived in that box. Mm-hmm. And Jesse was the box the school system puts you in. And he was so far out of that box. And now in our adult years, I'm just in awe of how much he knows about so many different things. Like you can talk Shakespeare with the guy, you can talk cultural, and I'm just sitting there going, how did I pass with flying? To me, it's very scary that I passed with such high grades and I literally know nothing. That's what's blowing my mind as I'm teaching my kids is I'm like, I don't know any of this stuff. Right. And yet I passed with high grades. And yet my husband, who's just just brilliant and he knows so much, he didn't thrive in that setting. And to me, it's almost, I don't know if I'd want my kids to thrive in the box because the box isn't, God has them on their own path and it may or may not fit the box that this public school is teaching them to. Right. So I've had so much fun. I've had so much fun teaching my kids and just the freedom to say, you know what, that's okay if you don't master that. I mean, there are certain things you need to master, but you know what, it's okay. And I always remember Jesse coming home because we were struggling with math with one of our kids. And he said, you need to step back and ask yourself what matters more, that you have a mathematician or that you have a relationship based on Christ with your daughter, because it was tears every day with math. And just that little, remember, go back to God has a plan for this kid. And I'm not going to be able to change that. If I think I have the power to change God's path, I don't. Right. He already has a path. I just need to facilitate and help grow those kids to accomplish what they need, to know what they need to accomplish that. So it's really fun to be able to teach to, and also to be able to say, we don't need to read a textbook about it. Let's go do it. Like I told you, we're hunters. So anatomy and physiology, that's right out there in the field every time. We will never pick up a textbook and learn about the organs, but we're out there doing it. And that's been a huge blessing because we're talking about blessings for our family, is to do what our family loves to do and educate our children while we're doing it as a family. And that's been so cool.
Yep. And you touched on something that I think is such a great benefit. And most homeschool moms, of course, as they are, I would say all homeschool moms, as they're into it for several years, realize there is so much joy in learning all over again. Because there's so much, like you, I mean, I don't remember very much of anything that I learned. And it's so much fun to be able to sit alongside and learn with our kids.
Yeah, it's cool.
It just makes it so much more exciting. And that in itself helps to build that relationship with our children. Because it's not just us instructing them. It's not us as teachers standing up and saying, learn this, and this,
Right.
learn all these facts, and then we walk away. No, we're
Right.
getting to be in the trenches with them. And we're getting to learn it and experience it with them.
Yeah.
And so for myself, and I know for Garrett, it, even with us, again, has opened our eyes up even more to the glory of God's creation.
Oh my goodness.
Awesomeness.
Because the first time around that I learned it void of God. I learned science void of God. I learned history void of God. And no wonder I didn't like it. Now I get to teach my kids that science is God's creation and history is his story. And that's been really neat for me. And also the ability when my kids find an interest in something, like we're doing American history. And, of course, my son likes certain part of the wars or whatever, that, or they ask questions and I don't have to say, well, no, I'm sorry, that's covered in 5th grade. You're going to have to wait. Where then I lose their interest. I'm like, hey, let's dive in. Let's look at it. If this is what you want to know, let's learn it. And then you capitalize on their drive and their desire to learn something, rather than, I remember so many times when I was teaching public school, kids would ask questions and I'd be like, that's not in my book. You'll have to ask your next year. And you lose them. You lose their passions. You lose their desire to learn.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
Yes, agree. Are you looking for a fantastic online math program that removes the burden of teaching math? Then Teaching Textbooks is for you. Our family's been using teaching textbooks for years, and we couldn't be happier. Our girls say that it makes learning math fun, like a game, and they love that it's interactive. Teaching Textbooks uses step-by-step video instruction and does all the grading for you. The newest version is available now with an app that even works offline. Sign up for the first 15 lessons for free at teachingtextbooks.com. That's teachingtextbooks.com. Okay, what are some other blessings of homeschooling?
Just realistically, the fact that when my kids sleep in, I can sit on the rocking chair and drink my coffee.
I was hoping you were going to say sleep in.
Yes, that I don't have to yell at my kids to get out the door. Every Sunday morning when it's time to go to church, I'm like, how? And we don't even have to be there till 10. I'm like, how do people do this? And I don't like having to yell at my kids to get ready. I like that when they get up, we probably, I would say this, one of the greatest blessings is every morning when my kids wake up, they come and I get a hug, each one of them, until the hug is over. I'm not rushing them. I don't have to give them a quick squeeze and go get dressed, get out the door. I get to embrace, because I know it's going to end. I know that there's going to be a day where my little boy isn't going to want to sit and snuggle me on the couch every morning. And that to me is like I see the bus go by while I'm holding my kids on the couch and reading to them. And it almost brings tears to my eyes that is such a gift. And that is something I can't imagine missing out on.
Yes. Oh, me too. I love it. I love morning times with my girls. Both of them, Brooklyn and I are going through a book called Reflect, I think. It's terrible. I can't remember the name of it.
You'll have to tell me about it.
It's such a good book. But it's just a book on just growing up. It's for, preteen, teen years, and Christian book, and really directs their hearts back towards, it's all about inner beauty. And it's fun. So we'll get up a couple mornings a week and we'll just read the book together and have discussions about that. And we would miss out on that. And my little one, she's the one who's usually awake first. And so, I get up and do my quiet time in the morning and just get to have that time by myself. And then she'll get up, and it's been happening more and more often where she'll get up and she'll see me praying and she'll say, Mommy, can I pray with you? And, she will kneel with me and we just pray together. And it's so awesome. Amazing. And I would miss out on that because you said, if they were going to school, one, I wouldn't get to sleep in.
Right. Totally.
And I really like my sleep. And I'm not a lazy person. But I do not like to have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning to, like you said, rush my kids out the door.
And I love to get up at 6, but you know what? I have a quiet house. I'm not rushing anyone.
Right.
I'm up a couple hours before the kids, and there's something about that quietness to prepare for the day. And then when they get up, I'm not frazzled. I'm not a wreck. I'm not yelling at them. I get to embrace them and welcome them into our day that God has given us. And that's, and the other thing too, is I think I often look at even when my kids have, VBS week, every parent knows VBS week. I think it's something that's been interesting for me because at the end of VBS, I feel like my kids are, at the end of the day, they're falling apart because they have been going, best behavior, constant socialization, just constantly going. And so at the end of that day, I get my kids leftovers. Like I get them in their most exhausted, like wiped out state. And I think that has really shown me that if they were gone all day from 7 a.m., I mean, our bus goes by at 7:15, and then between school and sports and homework, I would get the leftovers of my kids. I'd get their worst state, you know, and I don't want the leftovers.
Yeah.
I want them when they're, yes. And that's just been so awesome to be able to do.
Sure. Because those are the times that you get to most speak into their hearts.
Yeah.
Is when they're not so tired, when they're not so worn out from the day, when they're at their best and you're at your best, you know, find those opportunities during the day to be able to do that. One of my other favorite things about homeschooling is it gives our family freedom. It gives us the freedom to travel. It gives us the freedom to
take snow days.
Take snow days
anytime we want.
It just gives so much freedom to be able to just be a family, and you get to incorporate school into just everyday life.
Exactly.
School is not always sitting down and doing a worksheet.
Exactly.
It's just experiencing life together. And you know, last week we had our good friends the Wilsons came out, and they spent a few days with us in Savannah, Georgia, and we got to spend time together, and we took a walking tour and got to learn, you know, some of the history of Savannah, and it was just so much fun. And we had, you know, 2 of their kids with them and then our 2 kids with us. And we were like, this is the greatest school ever. You know, we're walking, it was 70 degrees outside. It was beautiful. Maybe it wasn't that warm. It was a little colder, but it was beautiful outside.
You're just trying to rub that in.
Right. 70 sun-filled. But it was so much fun to be able to just spend time in fellowship and actually learning. We got to go to the Telfair Art Museum, and we got to see some Monet paintings and just a bunch of, you know, French Impressionist art. And it was amazing. It was so much fun. And that was our school. We did not sit at a table and do worksheets, and our kids learned a ton of stuff, and they were so excited to get to do what we did. And so that it allows us to do the things that work for our family. And, you know, as we travel a lot, of course, and so we wouldn't be able to do that. And you get to go on vacations on the off season.
Oh, totally. That's huge. Yeah. And just the world being your classroom. Like, we can learn history by going to the assisted living home, and the kids get to listen to it from the people that lived it. And you know, they can, rather than read about geometry, we can actually build my son loves to build things. So it's like, figure out your angles by building a shelf for your room. And just the world is our classroom. We can, like you said, learn art by going to the museum. And for me too, like we talked about relationships and also the freedom and flexibility. So our family, like I said, we hunt and we fish, and we're active hunters. And it was really neat this fall. My daughter's finally of the age where she can hunt, and her dad took her for 10 days into the backcountry. And it was during the school year when all the other kids, she wouldn't have been able to do that. And I thought the 10 days that she's in the backcountry with her dad at 10 years old is far more invaluable to me than any other thing. So just the flexibility of what works for us and what works for our kids. And the blessings are unbelievably incredible of homeschool.
Yeah, they are.
And honestly, being refined, watching how God's refined me, watching how God has, you know, if I had all day, every day to myself, I wouldn't have to practice patience. I wouldn't have to, you know, and I just the way that God is refining me through this job that he's called me to do has been a huge blessing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I will say my very favorite thing, and we already talked about this, but I'm going to say it again. My very favorite thing, hands down, if I had to pick one thing that was my greatest joy and blessing in homeschooling, is being able to find opportunities throughout the day to speak truth into the hearts of my kids.
Absolutely.
I love that. I love being able to just have conversations with them about their creator and about their character and about the things that God is doing in our lives.
Yes.
And I cannot imagine how many opportunities would be missed if they weren't with me day in and day out. And that doesn't mean I don't need a break sometimes. You know, there are times where I need a break. I need to go have coffee with a friend or...
and they need a break.
And they need a break. That's right. From each other. They need a break from me. But, there's just so much blessing in being able to just find those moments.
Live out Deuteronomy say, like, live out that we are actually pointing them to Christ in everything that we do.
Right.
And so it's not just between 6 and 6:30 family devotion time, you know, it's all day. And that's what God calls all of us to do. It's a walk with him. It's not, you know, just a coffee meeting with God. We're to walk with him in all we do.
Right.
And to be able to do that with our kids is one of the greatest blessings there is. And to me, we always tease, we wish we lived 200 years. Like God did not make us to live in 2019, we say, but except that we know that he did. And we know that he called us to raise children in the culture that we're in, which just is so vastly different than it's ever been. In America, obviously there's nothing new under the sun, but to raise our kids to be able to stand strong in such a time as this, it takes intentionality. It takes more than a half hour after dinner before bed. If that's all I got, we're called to raise strong kids that have deep roots in the Lord. And in a culture like this, that takes a lot of time, and we have that time. Yep.
Well, I think that's the perfect way to close out this interview. Thank you for your encouragement. I hope that those who are listening and watching have been encouraged. You are full of wisdom, and I appreciate so much your time and
thank you.
What the Lord has done through you and the way that he is using you.
Well, he is good. He is big.
He is way bigger than me, and I am thankful that I get to call him Papa, and I get to depend on him to equip me with all that I need. So thank you, friend. You are a blessing.
And I'm
so grateful for your time today.
And I am so excited to see what God does, and just to see the parents that are just encouraged by what you and Garrett are doing. You guys are awesome, and I'm really excited to see what God's doing through you guys.
Thank you. Well, we're only awesome because God has enabled us to do what what he's created.
Us. We are not equipped. He equips us.
But thank you. Have a great rest of your day. And
you too.
And I would love to have you back on again.
That would be awesome.
Let's do this again.
Okay, perfect. All right. Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye-bye.